Trinity National Forest harvested about 200 million board feet of timber a year off of the national forest. After the president's plan hit, it dropped to 10.
Never occurred to us that the federal government would just abandon it, and they did.
Fires hitting fires on top of fires on top of fires. 2015, something like 260,000 acres burned in Trinity County. That's like the Rim Fire, the scariest fire that people still talk about, you know, that happened in the Sierra Nevada. That happens here every 3 or 4 years.
Got the edge.
A generation ago, federal policy changes led to the end of a decades-long program of aggressive timber cutting on public forests. Meanwhile, private forest companies increasingly sold their timberlands to distant owners. These changes, combined with a century of fire suppression and heavy timber cutting, left communities and landscapes on the economic and ecological edge. With public agencies and private businesses pulling out of remote rural communities, local citizens across the West launched a movement, a network of community-based organizations working to build a restoration economy, healing the land while putting local people back to work. As these groups have matured, their shared idea has become an effective movement for many struggling rural communities.
At one point, fires ringed almost the entire town, and the people of Hayfork have a long, extensive history with fire, but they also understand the importance of good fire and building forest health and increasing resiliency, and that's what we're hoping to do here today.
I don't know what we're going to do, but we have to do something so these children see that Hayfork has something to offer the world and that they can make a living here.
Lynn Jungworth founded the Watershed Research and Training Center in 1992 in response to the closing of the mills, the collapse of the timber economy, and the loss of a generation of young people from the town. Within a few years, she was testifying before Congress and found herself at the forefront of a movement in the rural West of local people blending entrepreneurship with long-term ecological sustainability. For the Watershed Center, Wildland Fire offers an opportunity to create jobs and build local expertise in managing local forests and accomplish a goal of uniting economic with ecological values in the surrounding community.
Our mission, as the Watershed Center, healthy forests and healthy communities through research, education, training, and economic development. The problem is that we are located remotely, surrounded by natural resources and an amazing and resilient ecosystem that we believe that we have a responsibility to take care of.
The Watershed Center recently purchased a former mill site in Hayfork and has started a firewood processing business aimed at regional chain stores. The idea is to find a market for smaller diameter wood that comes from local forests as part of fire mitigation work. That local capacity helps make some of these projects more feasible for landowners and puts a few people to work in the mill. The mill is part of the organization's strategy of diversification. They train workers for fire mitigation and ecological work, they put on educational programs, they consult with local landowners, and they pursue opportunities for projects with federal and state agencies. They try new things, learn from them, and either continue the programs or pivot from them. In the end, they seek to build local capacity in the community for future jobs in the forest.
We've got some real challenges. Rural development, rural economic development is what I call a wicked problem. It has no simple answer, and I can give you a couple of reasons why. If you're a corn farmer and the corn market goes away and you need to go soybeans, you take that land and you take it to the bank and you use it as collateral. When 75% of the land is owned by the federal government, you have no collateral. So how do you initiate wealth? That's the problem with rural communities, especially public lands communities.
These community-based organizations have a long-term vision and a long-term goals. Yes, they're taking on the thing that's directly in front of them, but it's not in the service of doing the thing directly in front of them. It's in service of a long-term transformation. But I think our next question, our next challenge is going to be, how do we bring this to a scale that can be done either in more communities or with larger impact in particular communities?
We'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't acknowledge that community-based organizations working in isolated rural public land communities in the West weren't fragile in some ways, like inherently. You know, these are communities in distress. They're not the sexiest places on the map. We're not talking about Lake Tahoe or Bend. One of the things we've been doing for the last 4 years now is hosting a prescribed fire training exchange around the North Coast. We've been working for several years, again, trying to build that local program around prescribed fire, build local qualifications, get engaged with the volunteer fire departments, work with the local units of CAL FIRE and the Forest Service and BLM, and put them all together and start doing cooperative prescribed fire management. And we've had some real success.
I'm driving through Hayfork one day, I saw the smoke coming up and asking questions around, and found out that somebody, was burning on their property, and that the plan and the burn had been put together by the Watershed Center. And so that's when we sort of started to ask questions: how do we do this on our property?
I'm hoping that we could organize landscape scale projects. We're already kind of seeing that happen, between Forest Service and private land ownerships, kind of planning at that scale. So I see that as a lot of the future, it's not just going to be private planning on private and Forest Service planning on Forest Service. It's going to be hopefully everybody planning together on a landscape scale.
Collaborative approaches to natural resource management have arrived in the West. It's really common. It's a really critical piece of how we manage public lands. The key question is, how do we implement that agreement? And the community-based organizations play a critical role in implementing the social agreement that we're reaching through the collaborative processes.
I got into this because of the social cost of stupid public policy. And for me, the big thing was it took a generation, but you know what? When Michelle, who was in the 6th grade when the mill closed, when she grew up, went to college, came back, wanted to live in this town, we had a place for her. I feel best about that. And the guys on the crews who didn't have to go away, they just had skills they could use, and they had decent jobs and jobs they could be proud of. That really, I think, is what I feel best about.